clock on the wall tells us it's time for another episode of Learn, Teach, Lead, where we explore how educators, just like you, are using innovative instructional strategies, including how to leverage AI to improve teaching and learning.
Each week, we share real classroom stories, tools, and tips to help you save time, personalize instruction, and lead with confidence.
I'm Jeanine Nostrom, an elementary school principal.
And I'm Robyn D'Angelo, an elementary school teacher. Let's get started with today's Friday debrief.
So, I think that this fabulous moment of the week could actually be the entire episode because this is really a fabulous moment. But why don't you tell me again about how you had your students move from their initial assessment to the assessment that you gave today? So just talk me through that whole process.
The students came in September. I had the privilege of looping with some of my students from third grade to fourth grade.
How many did you loop with?
I believe I looped with, and I will double check my numbers, but I believed I looped with 11 out of 19.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I knew where they ended up in third grade, but there's still a little, that summer slide a little bit back. And so when we started in September, the second week, I gave them a narrative pre-assessment that was in our curriculum. And I compared it because I like to see the transition from third to fourth. So you could see in the gold would be the students that were in third grade compared to the third grade rubric, comparing their pre-assessment narrative to the third grade rubric. Mm-hmm. And the blue color is if I took those narratives and compared them to a fourth grade rubric, because my goal was to find the comparison of where they were and where they needed to be at the end of my narrative unit. So I was almost pre-planning what I had to do to fill in the gaps to get them there. Now, the data is very on par because
let me just interrupt you for a second, Robyn. So in the gold, I'm showing that you have 14 students who were proficient and 5 who were on the bubble using the third grade rubric. So when you applied the fourth grade rubric, was this for a different assignment or for that same assignment?
It was the same assignment.
Okay, that same assignment. So judging them against the fourth grade standard, only 5 of the 14 were proficient and 10 of them were now on the bubble because the bar is raised, right? And then 4 of them were not meeting. Is that correct?
Of course, which is where where we expect them to be because we did not teach fourth grade standards yet.
Right.
But for me as a teacher, I like to kind of work backwards and know where they have to be and where they need to go from where they start. Right. And again, because I haven't taught fourth grade in a few years, I also want to know the end result and goal of where they need to be in fourth grade. Okay. So I wanted to collect this data to be proactive and see what I needed to do to fill in the gaps and what teaching points I needed to zone in on so that I can get them to that next level.
Right. I like it. The G in grow. You're gathering information.
I'm gathering information. So I ran all of them, and this was the data that we came up with. So now looking at the data, a lot of the students, because again, this was a third grade skill, did not have a strong fourth grade opening to their narrative. Now, should they? No, in reality, they had a nice third grade opening. And you can see that 14 of them were proficient in that opening. However, only 5 of them were proficient when I compared it to the fourth grade rubric. So I knew that I needed to go back and zone in on one of those goals and standards, which was the opening of a narrative.
Right, because when you ran their pieces through, the one thing you noticed coming up again and again was that the opening was on the weaker side. So that's where you targeted your instruction.
It was like that aha moment.
Show me
over and over again. The
wait.
aha moment we see over again in narratives. So I said, okay, so I chatted with ChatGPT as well as looking at the curriculum. And I looked at each individual student and I said, what give me, some lessons and some strategies that I can enhance my curriculum with to target instruction and differentiate for these students. So I met with them. We did whole class instruction. We did small group instruction. I paired them up heterogeneously. I paired them up homogeneously, depending on their strengths and their weaknesses. And then today, I was doing all of this teaching the last 3 weeks. And then today, we just wrote the opening of a narrative. And now this was the assignment. When I came in this morning, on the board, there was a do now. It said, open your Google Classroom, complete the assignment, submit it when finished, and wait for my feedback to edit. While waiting, they were allowed to go on typing club for a few minutes. So they opened the assignment, and the assignment was, we were talking a lot about perspective. In the perspective of the first person, I want you to do an opening paragraph, and the setting is at the park, and the problem that you're hinting at is that it's going to rain.
So that was it. First
That's
person
it.
using the I voice.
Yep.
You're at the park and it's going to rain. Go. Write an opening to a narrative story. Okay.
That was it. So they got to work, and they knew, well, my students from last year knew that I was going to take their opening. I was going to read it myself. Then I was going to put it into ChatGPT using the 4th grade rubric, narrative rubric, to look at and score that writing based on what they did. So they wrote it down, they typed it in, they submitted it. I gave them one chance. I said, here's the first set of feedback. I used ChatGPT. I told ChatGPT, give me the feedback in a kid-friendly version. I always read it before I do anything else with it. This time I copied and pasted it on their actual Google Classroom document. And I said, now you have one chance to go back to edit, because the next time you turn it in, I'm going to score it as a 4th grader. And this gamified it. They were like on fire.
Yeah.
They went and they looked at my feedback the first time, and they had to bring a Post-it note up. So when they were done the first time, they put a Post-it note with their name on it. I called them up. I gave them their feedback. They went back to edit. When they were done editing, they brought the Post-it note back up. I knew that was their second time editing. I now ran it through ChatGPT again, and I came up with their scores.
Okay, so let me just interrupt you for a second.
Yep.
So between the first assessment in September, you've done all this instruction on, writing a strong lead, showing them exemplars, doing your mini lessons, all of that. And now it was time for them to prove that they had mastered that skill. So they knew that you were running it through what you call your automated teaching assistant, right? To get that feedback from you and then going back and correcting it. So regarding the feedback, were you just letting them read it on their own, or were you conferring one-to-one with them when they came up with their Post-it note as to what the feedback was?
This time, because in the past I've conferred with them over the last 3 weeks, I felt now they were ready to read it on their own and take the ownership of correcting and editing their own work.
Okay, very good.
I did not read it to them. I did not go over it with them. I said, you have one chance to edit and to resubmit it, and then I will resubmit it to ChatGPT and give you your score. I will let you know when to check it, that your score is available. And when I tell you, they love Typing Club, so they're on Typing Club, but you can see they're waiting with anticipation for that score to come through, because they want to do well and they work hard and they want to do well. So my aha moment, I'm going to share my screen again, because this is 3 weeks later of targeted instruction, differentiation, really looking at the gap and filling it with the opening, because that's what was coming. That's what was coming through for the last when I ran their pre-narrative, here's my data for today.
Wow. Okay, let's take a look at that.
Now, this is only ran through and compared to the 4th grade narrative.
Okay, so this is just their opening paragraph?
Just their opening paragraph.
Wow.
But not compared to the 3rd grade anymore. This is purely 4th grade.
So they were all able to demonstrate proficiency in writing an opening paragraph.
Absolutely. 44.4% were meeting now, and 55.6% were exceeding.
That is not even 4 weeks of instruction.
No.
Right?
No.
Wow.
And I say it was about 3 weeks of instruction, and it was specific instruction. Mm-hmm. We're looking at the curriculum every day. We're following the curriculum every day, but differentiation means that we're targeting the instruction to meet the student's needs.
Yep.
And by doing that and looking at this data that I ran through and reading their pieces, it gave me a good trend, which we were talking about in my class, of what do they need to meet standard on, because the 3rd grade standard is different than the 4th. It wasn't anything that they were doing wrong. It was that the standard changed.
And it's funny because the hard part of the essay, the body of the essay, or the middle part of a story, for example, that's the harder part. And the kids seem to be doing better on that, probably based on all the work that we did last year. But the opening needed a little more attention. So very interesting.
Absolutely. And then I asked ChatGPT to compare. So here's one of the comparisons, and I'll come down to it. Their first draft to their second.
Comparing opening to opening.
Right. This is the same student. So their first draft early in September, this was the opening of their first draft.
Once there was a 9-year-old girl who lived by Ridge Ranch School in Paramus. Her name was Ariana, and it was her birthday.
Right.
Okay.
So that was a 3rd grade opening, because they were just coming into 4th grade.
Sure.
And it gave me some, techniques, and they gave me a score of 7 out of 15 from the narrative benchmark, which again, they were just coming into 4th grade. So I said, okay, but where do we need to go now? This was after refocusing.
Okay. I was sprinting to the tent when it started to pour, when I was under the tent, but then the wind was so strong the tent blew down. I had to ride my bike home, and I was terrified. I was so confused because I couldn't ride my bike when it was thundering. Then I heard a boom. I screamed, ah! Then I fell to the ground, and I couldn't remember anything after that. Yeah, I mean, with the exception of that second sentence there that got a little wonky, that's a much more well-developed opening.
Right. Yep. And it did pick that up, their grammar. And again, these are all things that we work on in 4th grade. They should not be, at the end of the narrative unit. We're not there yet. But because I targeted that instruction, they're that much closer to their goal and can then exceed.
Right. And I have a feeling, just the way that reads, reading some of the other pieces, that looks like an editing error to me, more so than like the student struggling to tell the story, right? Like maybe they didn't go back and reread their edit correctly, because the rest of the paragraph is intact.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I really like how it gave me like the growth summary. Yes, I can see that as a teacher, but it gives me like this nice 1-page, like we were talking about in our last episode, that snapshot of now, here's their growth summary. I can keep that in my back pocket on, and know that this student, where they need to go to next and continue that growth for this student.
And the snapshot there said, it described the student's opening initially as flat to a more dramatic opening. And that's definitely a conferring point with a student. Do you see how this original opening was flat and now it's so much more dramatic? Okay, let's look at this dramatic scene you're laying out, and then you can really teach into how to develop that. So, and the techniques that the student used or could use to enhance it.
For sure. And I have 20 students in my classroom. They're all different. They all learn differently. And, sometimes you do a whole group lesson, but there are some times that you really use this data and our observation to know where it needs to get to that next level. And by doing this today, number one, it was immediate feedback for the students. It was in real time. So they knew exactly what they needed to do to get to the next level of, because remember, I had them do it first, then I gave them a chance to edit it, and then I had them do it again. So they had, that was immediate real-time feedback, and they were confident. They all left today, my class, feeling like they were writers and they can do this. And, you know, talking about being in the human in the loop and gathering data, what better way for a student to want to try and want to succeed than having that confidence to do that?
Right. And I also want to mention that all of this AI was teacher facing. None of it was student facing. It was all, you know, any of the information put into any of these large language models, whether you're using Gemini or Magic School or ChatGPT, whatever, the students had nothing to do with that. They were doing their work the same way they normally do. And even if they were writing in a notebook, I know in this case they were typing, but think about how, you know, as a teacher, you could literally just snap pictures of notebooks and capture all of that data and have it to reflect on and to, you know, run through and get some, you know, ideas for teaching points. So amazing.
Absolutely. So, you know, keep gathering that information and,
Yep,
you know, keep moving on, because you will, you know, find success and your students will find success, you know, whether it's, you know, data that we gather or
yep,
observations, because I feel like mine was both today, you know,
sure.
and that's an important gather. And it's a great milestone for these students to be so successful.
For sure. And I hope some teachers out there try this and let us know how it goes for them. That would be so interesting to me. And our fabulous moment of the week was worthy of its entire episode all by itself. So that's amazing. Great job, Robyn. Super work.